Welcome to 10% Happier Live. I'm your host, Jeff, not Dan, filling in for Dan. Dan is somewhere. He'll be back tomorrow. He's good, although apparently he's turned into a 10-year-old boy. I don't know if you've seen him. He looks very young. He just keeps getting younger looking, and he's fine. And he'll be back tomorrow. So this is the deal, 10% Happier Live. We basically explore a little topic around meditation. The one we're going to do tonight, or today rather, is all about exploring obsessive thinking, which is one of my specialties. And then I will guide a little 5-minute practice, and then I can take your questions around that topic or really anything to do with meditation or mindfulness, whatever you guys are into. My name is Jeff Warren. I'm one of the teachers on the 10% Happier app. Dan and I wrote a book together called Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. That's my bio. The subject today, so obsessive thinking. This is actually what I wanted to call this little episode was Do Not Feed the Beast. Do not feed the beast. This is the experience for me as someone who has a lot of obsessive thinking, is that I get on some kind of rumination track on something. I get obsessed with some subject or some idée fixée or some idea of what I think is important, and I can't let go of it. I'm like a dog on a bone. I just keep perseverating. I keep working at it, and the more I work at it, the harder it is for me to kind of pull out. And I can get into these situations where, if it's, say, working on the computer or something where my wife's like trying to get my attention and there's just no way, I'm just completely embedded in it, or I'm just not present for what's going on around me. Actually, what can even happen is that it's like the more fixated I get, the more it's like one of those hurricanes you see in a satellite photo. It just sucks in more and more of what's going on around me. So more and more of my attention is in there. I start to feel like it takes over my moods and my emotions start to go there. And it just becomes this very hard thing to pull out of. And I think that I'm not alone in this. Even if you don't maybe have you're not quite as obsessive or fixated as me, there's definitely a sense in which we kind of get into our thinking patterns, and we're never stopping to think, is this what I actually want to do now? And that's kind of what I've learned to do from the practice, is just to start to notice this feeling of getting fixated or obsessed by something. And it can also be anxiousness. I'm worried about my situation or whatever it is. The practice now lets me do this thing where I'll go, actually, is this something that I really want to be perseverating on right now? You kind of have this moment of asking yourself, do I want to continue feeding the beast and letting the beast get very huge? Or do I want to shift to a different track? And it may be that you want to continue thinking about it, or it may be that actually this really isn't serving me so much anymore. And there's this thing where you can kind of pop out and then choose to pay attention to something different and then let that run its course. And this is enormously helpful. It's very helpful for, like I already said, for our worries, for things we're anxious about. It's helpful for being able to make contact with what's going on around us, just to be able to have a little bit of that kind of like meta-cognitive monitoring going on to be able to ask that question if I really want to feed that. So that's a little bit about do not feed the beast. Expect at this time a lot of us are feeding the beast. A lot of us are feeding our scenarios of disaster, our worries, our whatever it is, and getting it to the skill of knowing how to like disembed from that and reapply our attention somewhere else is super useful. So I thought I'd guide a meditation that will tap into that a little bit. So I'll kind of start us with this invitation to notice if there's some rumination pattern that you have going on and what it might feel like to just pop out of that, to notice it, and then to begin to put our attention somewhere else. And we'll do that for about 5 minutes, and then you guys can have a chance to ask a question if you feel like it can be about that or it can be about something different. So hope that makes sense. Let's do it. Okay, so you can start by taking a few deep breaths if you like. That's kind of how I like to start. So as I breathe in, it's like I stretch up the spine a bit. And then the exhale, that's kind of the downward motion. That's the letting go. It's just softening the forehead and the jaw and the cheeks. And then you can do that again. You breathe in, stretch up, and then On the exhale, not just softening the forehead and the cheeks, but also softening the shoulders when you breathe out. Even let the hands be soft. And already, just by paying attention to that, you may already have shifted gears a bit. So I just want to ask the question, if there has been some pattern of rumination that you're in, something you just, been thinking about, and this is an option to say, okay, you know what? Do I want to feed that still? Or maybe I want to just unhook from that, let it kind of play out in the background, and instead shift my attention over to this feeling of the body settling a little bit, this feeling of the exhale, so letting go in the exhale, and maybe the larger sense of what's happening in this moment, your body. First of all, that you have a body, just a disembodied head. You've got a body. It feels like something. It's sitting in your seat. You're feeling your feet on the ground or your seat on the cushion, whatever your setup is. And we can do a little attitude adjustment here of just I'm going to practice kind of enjoying this moment, enjoying this opportunity to take a break, to not feed whatever it was maybe you were feeding before, but instead to feed something peaceful in my experience, like maybe that feeling of the body settling or the soft feeling of the breath maybe. And maybe there's just kind of like a ambient hum in the space that you're in that you like to, kind of feels nice listening to that. Or the feeling of the whole body sitting. Good. And every time you exhale, you can imagine kind of breathing out maybe just a little more tension, getting a little bit more present. Now, so much of this practice, even these little short practices, it's a lot about choosing to appreciate the simplicity of things. It's not complicated. It's not exotic. You're just noticing the fact that you breathe, noticing the fact that your body is here, that it exists. The more we can appreciate these simple aspects of our experience, the more we boost the signal and the more they're available to us, the more we notice them all the time. These little places we can rest in. Now we're feeding something else. We're feeding something quieter, softer, a little more nurturing and healing. Not needing to do anything more complicated than that. Just don't need to get anywhere, be anything other than what's already happening. Just let it all come to you. The sounds, the breath just going on its own. Nice. So a little 5 minute reset. That's our meditation. All right. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as that. All right. So we're going to do a few questions. We got one from Rebecca saying, how do you stop rumination or obsessive thinking? You stop it exactly like the way I was. First of all, it's exactly like what I said, but the key move is that you actually don't need to stop it. You just need to stop feeding it. So this is the super important distinction that you start to notice with practice. Before, you didn't even realize you were feeding it. You were just thinking and thinking about something, and you just kept thinking about something, and you just kept thinking about something. And it was like you were continually making a choice to keep doing it, although you didn't really know you were doing that. It was just sort of an unconscious choice, if you want to call it that, which is no choice at all. So what you do with this is, this technique is just saying that all it is about noticing it. If you can notice, then you can have a choice whether you want to continue to feed it. And it feels like sometimes it's like you notice it's happening and it's still going on. So it's not like you can quash it. It might just still have a bunch of momentum behind it, but you notice that it's there. You go, okay, do I want to keep feeding this? If you don't, then the way you stop thinking is by just paying attention to something else. And eventually, if you're not feeding it with your attention, the thinking itself will play out. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's kind of tricky. It can be tricky to do it. And it is simple, but it can be tricky to do in practice. So it's just something you get a feeling for. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so Suzanne and CEB both want to know, how do you calm someone else's beast? Good question. When they obsess and it pulls you down and makes you angry. That's a great question. Well, so I think it's a similar principle. It's noticing when they're pulling you in. So this is the social contagion piece. Like people, it's like our patterns of rumination, our patterns of being, our emotional patterns. They're not just only prescribed by the skin. They come out of us. They affect the people around us. They have an effect on our environment, on our family, on our friends. And so what you can do is, I mean, all you can do is really you can really kind of take care of your own business in a sense. I mean, there may be a way to have a intelligent word with them, a compassionate word saying, hey, when you do this, it really kind of stresses me out as well. Is there any way you can kind of maybe put a check on that? I mean, you got to figure out if it's appropriate with that person to have some kind of, to respond in that way. And if so, what is the right response? But I can say what you definitely can do is something internally to yourself. So, and the first thing I would do in that situation is I would notice that I'm getting sucked in, that, oh, actually, I'm in this angry mood now because this person's kind of pulling me into their thing, or I'm in this annoyed mood, or I'm in this sad mood now. So you notice it's happening. It's a good thing to actually try to have a little bit of compassion for that person, especially if they're in a hard place. Like, oh, maybe they can't help what's going on with them. They're just in passion and go, oh, man, that person's probably having a hard time, and just say, do a little internally, like kind of recognize that, and a little internal, like, I hope you feel better. That can really take the sting out of it. But even if you don't feel up for the compassion piece, just noticing that what's happening is they're pulling you in. Okay, I can kind of notice that's happening. I can choose, do I want to keep going with that, or do I want to put my attention somewhere else? I mean, this is all the game. The whole game here, folks, is about, I have the ability, the power to choose what I want to pay attention to. And what you pay attention to in your life is massively important. It determines how your moods are going to go. It determines so much. So the question is, now that I'm able to notice it, do I want to keep feeding this, or do I want to pay attention to something else? And so that might mean sometimes having to do this thing where you're paying attention to your breath, they're going on doing their thing. And if you can't get out of the situation, they don't know, you're not feeding their whatever their thing is anymore. You're now paying attention to your thing. And if you can add the self-compassion or the compassion for the other person on with that as well, all the better for that. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so Beth is asking, do you have any advice for isolation fatigue? How can we feed something else? Yeah. Well, it's again the same principle. It's normal to have the isolation fatigue. I mean, I think that's the first thing I do when I'm in a challenging situation, is I kind of look and go, am I in this alone, or am I in this with other people? And this is definitely one of those shared experiences. So just realizing that, like, okay, I'm not alone in this. A lot of us are getting tired of this situation. That even of itself can kind of make a bit of a difference, just making it feel like it's less something that we're only on our own with. And then, just like I was saying, well, is there something else then I can fill up the real estate of my attention with? And I've talked with Dan before about the value and the importance of kind of knowing what your medicines are. Like, what are your sort of go-to things that can resource you a little bit, or your go-to things that are kind of nurturing for you, or that you can kind of get into? It might be that you like painting, or it might be that you like taking baths, or it might be like you like going for long walks, or doing a slack line, or whatever your thing. Like, having deliberately cultivating those other strategies, those other medicines as a way to resource yourself is good too. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're sort of in it with everybody. We're all trying to kind of figure that one out. But that's what I do. I try to do other things that I know are good for me. I try to connect to the fact that I'm not in this alone. And then I'll also say one of those things about connecting to other things, I try to figure out what little service initiative can I do? Can I do some little mission where I'm not just thinking about my problems and my worries, however legitimate they are, but I'm thinking about somebody else? So right now I'm working on a card for my niece, just putting some time into thinking about other people is super good for our mental health. That's actually one of the keys from the science of happiness research, is that the more you can kind of think about other people, the more often the happier you are. So that's something else. I mean, those are some things, guys. This is a tough time. There's no doubt about it. We got one more question. This is from a guy named Jeff, who I already like the sound of. He's saying, how can we incorporate this meditation in our day, especially in a time like this? I'm so happy you asked that question, Jeff. And it wasn't even me asking that question. It was something I was trying to remember to tell you. So this is what this practice looks like on a day-to-day for me. I do have a day-to-day practice where I'll sit and do, my 15 minutes or my 20 minutes of seated practice. And I like that because it just lets me connect to a little bit of stillness, a little bit of quiet. But I would say even more important for me is my moment-to-moment practice. And that moment practice is, in any moment, I'm just sort of lightly monitoring, am I being completely obsessed or fixated with anything right now? Is there any way in which I'm just kind of being like, crazy in that sense? Like, I'm super fixed on this one line of thinking. And if I notice it, can I just let go? Can I unhook? So the action is just, it looks more like this. I'm like going along with my fixation, and it's like, oh, do I really want to be doing this right now? Maybe I don't. And it's sort of this little sanity break. And then I kind of pull out and I deliberately pay attention to something else. And you can really do this at any moment. It's sort of notice the fixation, unhook, and come into a comparative space of freedom. And you just get to be doing it again and again. Now I'm just walking around. I start to notice just as a habit when I'm going into the fixation, and I pull out of it. And it makes life way better. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Guys, I think we're pretty much wrapping up this edition of 10% Happier Live. A couple things to say. First of all, Dan will be back tomorrow. He has an amazing teacher with him, a guy named Lamarod Owens, who I've actually taught with a bunch of times through the IB.me Inward Bound Teen Retreats. We do those together. This guy is the real deal. You've got to check him out. He's just a super compassionate, loving, extremely smart human being. So he'll be on tomorrow with Dan for 10% Happier Live. And then the other thing is, you might notice if you look at the whatever the YouTube page that you're on, in the comments section down below, there's a phone number. So if this is because we're going to do a special episode of the 10% Happier podcast, Dan's going to get me to come on. He's going to get Sebene to come on. So at least one really good teacher. That would not be me. That would be Sebene. We're going to get on and we're going to answer everyone's questions, any questions someone has about practice, about meditation, about how to deal with this time. This is, I think, going to happen on Thursday morning. We're going to do. So if you want to call that number and leave a voice message with any question whatsoever, that would be great. And we're going to try to get to them during this podcast. So there'll be a podcast that'll feature your voice. And the idea is to kind of bring in the voices of the community a little bit. So I think that's pretty much it. And I'm getting the thumbs up from Crystal, my producer, saying, that's enough talking, Jeff. And that's 20 minutes. You have to go now. And I said, okay, so I'm going now. So bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.